So think about walking down a really vibrant street. So much happening, street performers, vendors calling out, the rumble of traffic. It's a lot to take in, right?
It really is
Oh.
overwhelming sometimes.
And imagine amidst all that, there's this single, very quiet melody being played on a flute.
Hmm.
That subtle tune, well, in a way, it feels like our inner voice in the constant buzz of daily life. It's always there, but it can be so easily lost in the noise.
That's a wonderful way to frame it.
Yeah.
It brings to mind how our minds naturally organize the world around us. We're constantly sifting through this flood of information.
Right.
And what we latch onto, what becomes prominent in our awareness, that really shapes our experience. It's like trying to pick out that single flute amidst the whole brass band.
Exactly. And what we're really diving into today is how understanding this very process, this perception, might actually help us tune into that quieter inner voice, maybe even decode what it's trying to tell us. There's a whole way of thinking about this. Yeah, there's a school of thought, Gestalt psychology, that offers some really interesting ideas. It might sound a bit academic, but at its core, it's about how we don't just see individual pieces, we instinctively assemble them into meaningful wholes.
Like hearing a collection of notes and recognizing a familiar song.
Yeah, exactly.
Our brains are wired to find patterns, to create order from chaos, really. And a fundamental aspect of this ordering is the relationship between what we focus on the figure and what recedes into the background, the ground.
The figure in ground.
That dynamic is key, I think, to understanding why our inner voice can feel so faint sometimes.
Okay, let's try and get a handle on this figure ground idea. You know that classic image, the one where you can see either two faces looking at each other or a vase in between them?
Oh yeah, the Rubin vase, classic.
The drawing itself doesn't change, but what we actually see flips depending on where our attention lands. It's fascinating.
It's a perfect illustration. What captures your attention at any given moment dictates your entire perception of that image. Now, think about applying that internally.
Okay.
When your mental energy is constantly being pulled outward, deadlines at work, keeping up with the news, social obligations, all that stuff, those things become the figure in your awareness.
They take center stage.
They demand your focus, yeah.
And that inevitably pushes our inner voice, that quieter stream of intuition and deeper understanding, into the ground, right?
Precisely.
It's still present, like the other image in the vase, but we're simply not directing our focus toward it.
Exactly. It's not that it vanishes.
Yeah.
We just need to intentionally shift our attention inward. It's fundamentally about where we direct our attentional spotlight.
But the challenge, especially now, is just the sheer volume of things competing for that spotlight.
Oh, absolutely. We're bombarded with countless thoughts, notifications, conversations. It creates this constant barrage. Our inner voice, in contrast, tends to be much more subtle. It requires a conscious effort to truly listen.
It's almost like trying to pick up a weak radio signal when there's a ton of static. You've got one channel broadcasting anxieties about the future, another replaying past regrets, and a third one just filled with the noise of daily tasks. Trying to isolate one clear signal in all that interference can feel, well, impossible sometimes.
Our internal landscape often mirrors that, exactly. External distractions, those constant pings and demands, they create layers of mental noise.
Right.
And internally, unresolved emotions, unmet needs, lingering questions, they all contribute to this sense of distortion. It creates a kind of mental fog.
Yeah, fog.
That makes it incredibly difficult to discern the quieter signals of our authentic selves. An unresolved conflict with a colleague might constantly be on the edge of your awareness.
That low-level hum.
Exactly, creating this subtle undercurrent of stress that makes it harder to tune in to your intuition about, say, a new project.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Gestalt psychology highlights that perception isn't passive. We're not just recording devices. We actively construct meaning from what we encounter.
Yes, that's crucial.
So whether that inner voice comes through clearly really hinges on how we choose to direct our awareness. If we're constantly seeking external validation or driven by underlying fears, those will inevitably dominate our perceptual field.
They become the default figure.
So as we continue on this journey to understand our inner voice, it seems the first step is recognizing what currently occupies the figure of our attention. What are we actually focusing on most of the time?
Precisely. But the encouraging aspect is that we can cultivate the ability to intentionally shift that focus. It's a skill, It can be developed.
How so?
Well, think about that feeling of being in a job that seems perfect on paper, but leaves you with this persistent sense of emptiness.
Uh-huh. I think many people can relate to that.
That quiet, knowing that something is amiss, that's often your inner voice attempting to surface. It's trying to become the figure.
Or it's like when a particular thought or idea keeps nudging you, even if it doesn't align with your carefully laid plans, that unexpected urge to pursue a creative hobby, for instance.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't fit your current identity, it can feel unsettling because it doesn't match your established narrative.
But if you consistently suppress it, it often just intensifies, doesn't it? It gets louder in its own quiet way.
Yeah.
What's fascinating there is how readily we can overlook those internal promptings. Not because they are silent, but because we aren't truly listening.
We're filtering them out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes the resistance we feel isn't due to a lack of clarity. It stems from a fear of disrupting our comfort zone, of venturing into the unknown.
And I think we also get caught up in this idea of control. Modern life often emphasizes productivity and self-optimization, right? And it can feel like we should be able to simply will ourselves to be more self-aware, just, decide to listen.
But Gestalt suggests that perception is more holistic, that genuine insights often emerge more organically. They bubble up.
So trying too hard might actually backfire.
Exactly. Trying too forcefully to establish that connection with your inner voice can actually be counterproductive. It's like trying to capture a timid bird. If you move too aggressively, it will only fly further away.
Ah, interesting. So patience.
Patience and a certain openness are truly essential.
Which brings us to this important idea in Gestalt theory, unfinished business.
Yes, very important.
These are unresolved issues, right? Whether they are past hurts or unexpressed emotions that tend to linger in our awareness, creating an underlying tension.
Like background noise that never quite goes away.
And that tension often pulls our focus outward, distracting us from our internal landscape. For
Right.
example, like you said, an unresolved conflict with a family member might constantly replay in your mind,
Right.
creating a low-level anxiety that makes it difficult to focus on quieter internal signals of intuition or deeper desires.
They function exactly like static on that radio signal we discussed earlier. Until we consciously address these incomplete aspects of ourselves, our inner voice really struggles to cut through the noise and provide effective guidance.
It can't get through.
Consider someone who always harbored a passion for music, but abandoned it due to societal expectations. That suppressed desire can manifest as a persistent, vague sense of dissatisfaction years later. That's unfinished business.
It's as if that unacknowledged desire creates a kind of fragmentation within us, a missing piece.
Yes, precisely. And when we finally allow ourselves to reconnect with that lost part, it's like reintegrating a piece of ourselves.
That's often when the inner voice can begin to speak more clearly, isn't it? Helping us piece together those fragmented aspects and achieve a greater sense of internal harmony.
So, how do we practically begin to disentangle all of this? How do we reconnect with that inner voice?
Yeah, the practical side.
It fundamentally comes down to recognizing that our perception is inherently selective. We can't possibly attend to everything simultaneously. It's just not possible. So by consciously choosing what we prioritize in our awareness, we can create the necessary space for those quieter, more authentic signals to emerge.
And one powerful way to cultivate this is through mindfulness, maybe. Not just as a relaxation technique, but as a method to really sharpen our powers of observation.
Absolutely. Simply noticing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, observing how they arise and pass away. Over time, you begin to discern patterns and those deeper currents that influence your behavior. You start to see the ground, not just the figure.
That makes sense. What else?
Well, another valuable approach is to move beyond purely intellectual analysis and engage with your emotions on a physical level.
Interesting. Like embodiment.
Kind of, yeah. If you're grappling with a significant decision, try truly embodying each option. Stand up, move around, visualize yourself living with that choice. Pay attention to how your body responds. Where do you feel tension, relaxation, a sense of expansion or constriction?
So paying attention to those gut feelings, literally.
Exactly. These visceral responses often represent your inner voice communicating in a nonverbal way. It's not always words.
Ultimately, it seems that hearing that inner voice requires a fundamental act of trust. Trusting not only in its wisdom, but also in our own capacity to understand it.
Trusting that the answers we seek are already within us,
Yeah.
just waiting to be acknowledged.
And trusting that even feelings of discomfort or uncertainty can serve as signposts, right? Pointing toward growth.
Exactly. The journey inward isn't about attaining perfect silence.
Yeah.
That's probably unrealistic. It's
Yeah.
about learning to navigate the noise, appreciating the complexity of our internal world, and discerning those subtle melodies that are often hidden beneath the surface.
Because, as I tried to say at the beginning, sometimes the quietest sounds carry the most profound truths.
Beautifully put.
So, okay, we've explored this idea of our minds as these bustling cities and how our focus can either drown out or amplify that quiet inner musician. We've delved into the concept of the perceptual field as this constantly shifting space, and how prioritizing external demands can push our inner voice to the periphery, into that ground.
And we've considered the importance of wholeness, of addressing those unfinished business aspects to gain greater clarity, clearing the static.
Right, and a central insight here is the profound influence of our attention, like a spotlight.
Yeah, that spotlight analogy is good. What we choose to illuminate shapes our perception and deeply impacts our ability to hear that internal guidance. There's this idea, isomorphism, in psychology.
Okay.
It essentially means that the way we focus our attention outwardly has a direct mirroring effect on our inner experience. So consciously focusing inward can literally change what you experience internally. It reshapes the inner landscape.
Wow. And those moments of sudden understanding, those flashes of clarity where everything seems to click into place, insight, I guess.
Yes, insight. They often arise unexpectedly, don't they? After a period of simply allowing things to settle and incubate.
Yet you stop trying so hard and then boom.
Exactly. It's as if all the disparate pieces of a puzzle suddenly align.
Which brings us back to that dynamic interplay of figure and ground. We need to consciously work on shifting that relationship to bring the inner voice into sharper focus.
And a technique like bracketing can be useful here.
Bracketing, what's that?
It's where we temporarily suspend our assumptions and judgments, like putting them in parentheses just for a bit. It helps allow what truly arises from within to become more apparent without our usual filters.
Setting aside the usual narratives. But there's a fascinating paradox at play here, isn't there?
Which is?
The more we strive to control this process of finding our inner voice, the more elusive it can become. It's like that concept you mentioned, effortless effort.
Precisely. Willful striving, attempting to force a particular outcome, can actually push that inner wisdom further away. It creates tension.
So what's the alternative?
Willingness. Surrendering to the process with openness and, crucially, a lack of attachment to a specific result. That seems far more conducive to genuine self-discovery.
Okay. And this leads us to a really compelling, maybe even challenging question. What if the biggest barrier to hearing our inner voice isn't all the external distractions or even our internal resistance, but something we carry within us? Our own shadow.
The shadow. That's a deeply insightful question. In Gestalt terms, the shadow encompasses those hidden aspects of ourselves, the parts we've rejected or deemed unacceptable, maybe parts we're ashamed of or just haven't looked at.
And why is that relevant to the inner voice?
Well, what's particularly interesting is that our inner voice, that core authentic part of us, often resides within this very shadow realm. It speaks from the parts we ignore.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to take in. It's like the ancient myth of Icarus, maybe, who flew too close to the sun.
How so?
Well, his downfall wasn't just about ambition. It was about ignoring his limitations, those inherent boundaries, that metaphorical shadow he refused to acknowledge.
Interesting take.
And when we neglect those quieter, perhaps more vulnerable, or even darker aspects of ourselves, our inner voice can be drowned out by the louder demands of ego or external pressures.
So embracing the shadow, as paradoxical as it may seem, becomes essential for genuine illumination and self-understanding. It's not about dwelling in negativity,
Right, not wallowing.
but about acknowledging the full spectrum of who we are. Consider projection, how we often judge others most harshly for the very traits we haven't yet accepted within ourselves. That's the shadow pointing back at us.
It reminds me of that powerful quote from Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Exactly. Our inner voice is constantly attempting to bridge that gap, to bring those unconscious elements, those shadow parts, into the light of our awareness.
So how do we even begin to engage with this shadow? It sounds
Right.
tricky.
One way is through inner dialogue, actually having a conversation internally with that shadow self.
Talking to your shadow.
Yeah. Asking it what it needs us to understand. Why have we kept it hidden? How can we begin to integrate these fragmented parts?
It might sound a little unconventional.
But it can be a profoundly effective way
Yeah.
to foster inner wholeness and hear what that hidden part is trying to say. Maybe it holds wisdom we've been missing.
It almost touches upon philosophical territory, doesn't it? This whole idea of authentic living.
Absolutely.
Existential thinkers often discuss the tension between our inherent freedom and the constraints we encounter, and ultimately the significance of living in alignment with our true selves.
And from a Gestalt perspective,
Yeah.
that authenticity arises from aligning our actions with our inner voice, including the voice coming from the shadow. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it often requires challenging the status quo and confronting our vulnerabilities.
It's not the easy path, necessarily.
Definitely not. But that congruence, that sense that our outer life reflects our inner convictions, our whole self, that's where true resilience and a deep sense of meaning reside, I believe.
So let's revisit that image of the street musician for just a moment. The flute player. Imagine walking closer, drawn in by that faint melody. And then you realize the music isn't coming from an external instrument at all. It's emanating from within you.
Ah, yes. That realization that the guidance we are seeking is already present within us.
Yeah.
It's incredibly powerful.
Our journey isn't about discovering some new voice out there.
No, it's about learning to truly hear the one that has always been there. To amplify it, maybe, above the surrounding noise. To give it the figure status.
And as we continue on this path of self-discovery, it's so important to remember that it's an ongoing exploration, isn't it? With infinite depths to uncover.
Always more. Trust that inner voice, nurture it with your attention, and remain open to the wisdom it holds, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, be open to its mysteries.
And perhaps as you tune inward, take a moment to consider what still remains unspoken within you. What profound insights might the silence itself be holding if you just let it be the figure for a while?